It really is up to that point. It is unparalleled in the history of the modern world that the regime was destroying its own children. In this respect, it was very different from the Nazi terror. The Nazi terror was directed against political opponents and against Jews and gypsies. And a good German had no reason to be concerned about his survival. The Soviet regime, however, nobody was safe. And quite remarkably, the higher you were in the hierarchy, the less chances of survival. In 1934, Party Congress was called, and the Party Congress had something like 2,000 participants. By the next Party Congress in 1939, half of them were already dead. Half of them were already killed. The Soviet army leadership was destroyed, which would have unhappy consequences because the Allies in 1939 believed that the Soviet army is not a very valuable fighting force, and therefore were less anxious to establish alliance against the Nazis. And the Nazis also were contemptuous of the Red Army because of the destruction of the officer corps, and consequently embarked on the attack of the Soviet Union with greater confidence than otherwise they might have. We can look at what groups were most likely to be hurt. Foreign communists who came to Russia, came to the Soviet Union, were particularly hard hit. It has been established that Stalin killed more German communists than Hitler did. The Polish communist leadership in Moscow was destroyed. Why? We do not have an answer. Well, the consequences of the terror. The terror affected every aspect of life. People talked to one another differently. There are recorded incidents, but there were two sisters. Each hated the communists. Each hated what was going on, but they would not tell it to one another. Parents talked differently to their children. Now, the consequence of the terror was also that people took revenge, denounced one another. We have enormous archives of denunciations. That is, if you wanted to get rid of the husband of a woman that you actually liked, you denounced him. Living conditions were poor. People were living in close quarters. The regime did not invest in housing. People lived in very close quarters. On occasion, 4 or 5 families lived in the same apartment. Well, if you denounce your neighbor, you acquire a little more living space. That is, the terror did not bring out the best of human beings.